Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Writers Drinking Whiskey, your literary happy hour, the show where every close encounter is of the third or fourth or fifth round kind. I am your host who always calls home, despite what my mother tells you, William Mark Hincy, and today I'm really honored and thrilled to have award-winning author Linda Zimmermann with me. Linda, welcome to the bar.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. So I'll give you the brief bio, and then you can, add anything that I might have missed. Because you've had over 30 books, so we'll try to give the overview here. But on science, history, paranormal, fiction, your Ghost Investigator series was adapted into the comic books. The novel, we were just talking about this kind of pre-show. The novel's, is you just say the letters HVZA, or is...
Hudson Valley Zombie Apocalypse, but HVZA is a lot easier.
I get it now. Now the hamster wheel's moving. You read that was adapted into a graphic novel. And then other works, just to mention a few, you had That Science, which I think you're reading from today, which I'm really excited about because it sounds like a really funny book. It's Hudson Valley UFOs, American Historic Haunts, and Mysterious Stone Sites, and then amongst many, many others. Part of that, life-wise, like I know you started off as a research chemist. I think it was medical diagnostics,
yes.
If I remember right. And that was kind of prior to becoming a full-time author here. So anything you'd like to add to that illustrious list here? Or?
No, I'm just tired out listening to all the things I've done. So
You've been busy. You've been
I
doing
have.
a lot of stuff. Yeah.
But it's all been fun. So it's not work when you're having fun.
There you go. That's an important. That's what I always tell people about the show. I'm like, it's a labor of fun. Like there is labor. It ends up being a lot of work with this, but it's fun. Like it's,
right.
You go do it, and that's the best type of labor. So absolutely. So I always like to start off with, where are you in the world, and where's the best place to get a drink there?
I am in Chester, New York, which is, I can be in Midtown Manhattan in less than an hour, depending on the traffic. The best place to get a drink around here, we have some old time bars. I don't know that the one that was the best just closed during COVID. So, we lost a lot of those. It's rural. It's suburbs. But there's still a lot of rural areas, and that old charm, the bar that's been there for 90 years. Right. But we've lost a lot of them. So I don't want to name something and then it's been closed. But go down some rural road, and when you see the blinking neon sign, that's where to go.
Very good, very good. Yeah, that's the sad part about it, right? When you lose this. My wife jokes because I always love I love small businesses. So yes. I'll find like, this little coffee shop, and then they close on me. And so we've been married 14 years. And I can't even think of how many different places have closed now. In fact, there was a Vietnamese noodle place, a pho restaurant that we loved. And I was having lunch there one day and made a joke to my coworker who was sitting with me, like, if they ever close this place, I'll just never eat pho again. I'm just done. And the owner, Mylene, hears me saying that, and she didn't hear the whole comment. She just heard me talk about it closing. And she goes, she came over, kind of put her arm on my shoulder. She's like, yeah, I know. I was really sad when we had to make the decision to sell the place. And I was like, what? No. So she actually came to the house to show me and my wife how to make pho. She really taught pho because I was so distraught. She's like, okay.
Isn't that sweet? That's great. And can you make it?
No.
A lot of I love Thai food, but you need the Thai ingredients. You can only substitute so many things.
Right.
So I don't have a Thai grocer near me. So
sure.
But I can manage Indian food fairly well, but the Thai still eludes me because of the ingredients.
Sure. Well, and we have all kinds because we're it's kind of the same thing. We're about 25 minutes from LA, depending on traffic. But LA is sprawl, right? I mean, the sprawl's endless now. You barely you go 60 miles now before you really hit anything, or start hitting the desert where it's a little more actual rural. But the nice part is anything you ever wanted, you can go find. There's a Japanese grocery over here. There's this, so you can kind of go find.
That's great.
So my problem is more incompetence. She showed us. I videoed it and then it didn't take.
A little harder to overcome than
just a little bit. Just a little bit. So awesome. So then my favorite question of the show, what are we drinking today?
Well, unfortunately, it's not whiskey. I hope not to disappoint people. I am drinking a herbal tea called Vata tea in my New York Giants mug.
There you go.
Show my team pride there. But yes, it's a night. I've had a very busy day. It's one of those days where as soon as you get home, you're leaving again for the next appointment. So I thought a nice, calming Vata tea. It's an Ayurvedic tea, which suits me. So it's I never have a problem gearing up for something. It's the winding down. It's shutting off your brain so you can actually get some sleep. So this sometimes helps.
Yeah, I believe it completely. Yeah, I noticed that just yesterday, actually. Usually I make sure to get a workout in because if I don't, I just have too much excess energy I feel at night. And I'm just like, I'm awake. And last night I'm like, it's Sunday. Maybe I'll just take the day off. I'll do stuff around the house. And I did all of that, and around 11 o'clock, I go to bed, and I'm just awake. I don't know what time I went to bed, but I'm just like such a wide awake. I'm like, okay, watch this show. What am I doing? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to work on this. So I hear you. And that's the secret of the show, anyways. It's writers drinking whiskey, but then depending on recording time, I think the last episode I recorded was with Ken Liu, the fantasy author. And we recorded it 9 o'clock our time, or my time on the West Coast. So 12 for him. So both of us are like, it might be a tad early. Just have some coffee and chat here for a bit. So awesome. So then I wonder if maybe we can start then. So I had mentioned in the introduction there, if I can find my words, that you had been a research chemist, kind of medical diagnostics and things. And then you have come out with a book, and let me see, I wrote it down here because I loved the title so much. It was Bad Science, but then the subtitles, A Brief History of Bizarre Misconceptions, Totally Wrong Conclusions, and Incredibly Stupid Theories. Which was a hilarious title. I was really happy to see that. So maybe you could kind of take us so I'm guessing maybe they're interconnected a little, the schooling for being a research chemist and things leading to that, but maybe kind of take us on that journey of your life.
Sure. So I worked for a medical diagnostics company. Basically, we made the test kits when you go to get your blood tests. We made the test kits to, determine all of that. And I love laboratories. I love lab glassware and instruments, and it's just I love experimenting and things. And there were quite a few PhDs there who had an attitude and would try to lord it over everybody. And when they made a mistake, of course, it was your fault. And so I was making a joke at one point that, I should just start collecting all these stupid things these PhDs do. And then I realized I love history. So I was like, well, there's a history of this. So I just started researching and went way back to the ancient Greeks. And it is all the crazy things people believed, that the universe, all the planets were on these crystalline spheres, and they moved because the spheres moved. And the more scientific data, we started collecting in the 1600s, that theory was not working. So let's not get rid of the spheres. Let's add more spheres. And then, that doesn't work anymore. Well, now we need even more, and they'd have dozens and dozens and dozens of spheres. And finally somebody said, enough. It's, but it takes so much. And, people like Galileo, well, let's torture him because he thinks the sun is in the center of the solar system. And so there's just been, and the fraud people commit, and it just went on and on. People, I think the general public sees scientists in a way as a semi-revered group of people. Yeah, no.
Sure. Right. There's like almost this arbiter of truth about it, right? They're like, oh, well, you follow the science because that's the truth, right? And you're like, not necessarily. Like,
oh, no. No. So, and I look at it in the humorous light, as the title, this was not a scholarly review of of scientists' little mistakes. It was, let's have fun with this. So.
Right. That's funny. Is there any was that your favorite examples, all this, the cylindrical spheres going around, or was there any one that kind of always stuck out to you?
Oh, you name it. They used to think there were tooth worms. That's what, that's why you got decayed. Yeah. But, at the time, you think people's food, they had maggots in it and everything. And yeah, of course you have a worm in your mouth. You just put it there in your bread. And that the way to get rid of them, there was some really bad, I don't know how much you want to hear, but one of the things was to, let's say, remove the sphincters of certain animals and put them on a string around your neck. And that would protect you from tooth worms. Maybe we're going to need a drink at the end of this.
I know, really. I'm thinking about these whiskey bottles now as we're talking about it. Like,
but you name the science, medicine. I was going to read a short thing about some of the medical discoveries, that it just seems that you get these older entrenched scientists who don't want to hear from the upstart younger ones who are completely overturning. I mean, look at Pasteur and all these famous people who had to fight tooth and nail to, yes, there's things called germs, there are bacteria, there's, so it really, you name the science. And then even some of the modern things, there was, I believe it was at Harvard, this brilliant young cardiologist was receiving all kinds of grants to study certain heart medications in dogs. And somebody noticed that he initiated this experiment on, say, June 3rd, and he left the lab and somebody looked at his paperwork. He put in the initial June 3rd results, and then he put in the results for 2 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. He was just making it up completely.
Oh my goodness.
Day one, and he's putting month one results in. And this was a huge scandal because he was the golden boy. And then the university had to return hundreds of thousands of dollars in phony, grants for phony experiments. And then everyone who was associated with him is now tainted.
Sure.
So
that's awful.
Yeah. So it's not just people making mistakes and clinging to it. There's people doing out and out fraud.
Sure. Is there any that are still going on? Like I know, I think of some, like, I don't know that there's still commercials, but there used to be the bracelet. You put that bracelet would just like heal everything.
Oh, absolutely. You name it. The snake oil salesmen are alive and well. Socks you put on, the herbs that you never heard of before and you have no idea where they're coming from. But yeah, the bracelets, the pendants, the people still are pushing pyramid power. And I'm probably going to get hate mail from that. What do you mean that isn't real? Right. But yeah, it's still, unfortunately, very much alive and well. And so someday in my future, there may be a Bad Science 2, or at least an updated version. Yes.
Right. That'd be awesome. So was it just kind of being in the lab and witnessing, not that they were fraudulating data or anything when you were there, but was it just kind of witnessing like the behavior of the PhDs that inspired you to, maybe write that book, but did that inspire you to kind of go into writing full time or?
Oh, no. Writing was something I did as a little kid. I kept a diary every single day for like 20 years. I started as and you watch, I don't know what, maybe 10 or something when I started. And I was always writing, and it was something I thought I would do when I retired. But then the laboratory our company was bought by some big corporation who decided to just close the research and development division, which is, I was in research and development. And so all my other friends were scrambling for other jobs in science. And I said, I'm young. I have some savings. Let me try writing now, and I can always go back to the lab. And there were some very lean times, starving artist, yes, but I never had to go back to the lab. So it was a scary decision to make, but it's something I loved so much. When you love something like that, you really put yourself into it, heart and soul. Mm-hmm. Unlike a regular job, oh my God, you're looking at your watch. Is it time to go home yet? And yet with writing, only 12 hours have gone by. It's different when you put all of your energy into something, and you can, hopefully you'll find a way to make it work, whatever it is, music, art, writing.
Mm-hmm, sure. Yeah, it's funny, the synchronicities of the show here. It's just in life, right? But so I worked for a medical device company. So in fact, last week? It was 2 weeks now. We opened a new plant. We moved a manufacturing plant from China over to Tijuana, where we had another plant, and I had to go. Kind of one of my last things with the company, I need to go audit the plant, go in the clean room and everything.
Right.
Go in there. I fouled that up completely, by the way. I was like, what's your guys' process for when people really mess this up? Because I've just destroyed this here, It turns out they did not process. I'm like, well, that's an audit finding, buddy. I'm sorry that I gave this to you, but here we are. But I was on the show, recording wise, it would have been maybe 3 months ago. And at that point, I'm a director. My title is Director of Quality Regulatory with S.J. Roseanne. And she used to be an architect. And we were talking about that. And she's like, it's just hit a point where I just couldn't focus anymore. I loved my job. I loved the people, but I couldn't focus anymore. I just wanted to write. And then I was like, I feel exactly that way. It's hit the kind of like, I can't focus. Like everything is so hard. That used to be so easy to do. And then they gave me the word that when this project's over, they had already shut down my division. I'd already gone through getting bought and shut down the division. They kept me on for all these projects. Well, they wrapped me completely into this project. And they said, okay, this project goes away. And it's the same thing. I was like, you know what? I've been doing this. Like, we have 2 older kids. They're grown up. We have grandkids now. They have their kids.
Wow, you do not look old enough to have grandkids.
It's all the drinking. It keeps you young, So that's what I found. Contrary to what people think. But then that happened as me and my wife talked about it. And she's like, why don't you just go pursue it? We're doing fine. Go full time into it. So I kind of right at that moment you just described, I'm like, okay, I think June 28th is my last day. And I'm like, I have one real thing I need to do before then. So I do that. And I'm like, okay, well, it's time to, to go out and brave the wilds here. So
congratulations. It's time, right? You know when it's time.
Right. And it's like, I get what you mean. It's exciting and it's scary. But,
Oh, yeah.
I felt the same. I'm like, I can go back. I mean, if we can't feed the kids, I can go back, get a job, maybe that's not teach them to feed themselves,
Yeah,
might be a good thing for everyone.
That's right. Yeah, life is too short to not do what you enjoy if you can.
Right. You have to at least give it a shot.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's no shame in it not working out because so much is luck and everything else, but you got to give it your shot at some point. So
Absolutely. I applaud that. So good for you.
Awesome. So I think then it would be cool. Maybe we can transition to, Hudson Valley UFOs. And I know you had a couple experiences yourself. So maybe you could tell us about the book. And if I remember right, and I always pull back the curtain. I need a curtain effect for this show because I always tell everyone what I'm doing, is that the way I had was introduced to your work was through the Unsolved Mysteries podcast. And there was an episode that talked about the Hudson Valley, UFOs, and I think there was some other things to it. It's been a few weeks since I listened to it, but so maybe you could tell us about the book, maybe your encounters, and we can just go from there.
Sure. It wasn't anything I planned on doing, writing about UFOs, but I grew up in the Hudson Valley of New York, which is it runs from New York City up to Albany, so about 120 miles. I don't know, something like that. And growing up, there were always UFO stories in the news, or you knew people who saw something. And actually, as a little kid, I thought UFOs were normal because there were so many stories. Like, okay, we don't know what they are, but they're all around. And so when I was writing about different things, I did a lot of lectures in local libraries. There's a million libraries. So I would, do different, whether it was history or the paranormal. And people would come up to me afterwards and start telling me their UFO story. And I'm like, I just spoke about the Civil War. Why are you telling me this? They're like, you live here. We like the way you tell a story. You should do a book. And I just kept hearing this for decades. And I was interested because I did have a couple of sightings. And I said, I should really look into this. And, though I don't know what you have out in California, but there used to be these little newspapers called like the Penny Saver or something. They were free little local. Sure. People could put ads in and they'd have a couple of articles. And so I contacted one of them and they said, yeah, we'll put an article in, author looking for UFO stories. Well, it's the damn burst. I could not believe. I was afraid to open my email and handwritten letters and just people who hadn't told their story for like 30, 40 years because of the ridicule factor. They wanted somebody who wouldn't make fun of them just to listen. Right. So I very rapidly had enough for one book. The first book was In the Night Sky, and we actually made a film about it, which won an award. And then came the second book, the third book, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I put them all a year or two ago, combined all of these stories into a massive 8.5 by 11. I think it's a 4-pound book. And so it's a comprehensive, if you're interested in UFOs, in this area, this is the book to go to. In fact, there was just there's one hot spot in this area called Pine Bush, and Saturday was the Pine Bush UFO Fair, and I think it was somewhere around 7,000 to 10,000 people showed up in this tiny little town, and I have another stack of people of witness forms and things.
Sure.
It's self-propagating. And so it's been fascinating because I'd say 90% of the people are genuine. they've seen something, they don't know what it is. They just want to tell their story. I had just on Saturday, he's a retired police officer, works security now, very, straightforward, straight shooter guy. He had a sighting back in 1973, he and his sister when they were kids, an incredible sighting, a massive craft. He said, I had a baseball, I could have hit it. It was so low. And he said, of course it made an impression on his life. These are life-altering experiences, lasted about 40 seconds, and he remembers it like it's yesterday. So it's kind of an honor and a privilege that these people feel comfortable telling me, these stories they haven't shared before or with very few people. And it makes the people, when I tell the stories or they read the book, they say, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. Well, some of them are still crazy, but, I'm not alone. And I remember this one elderly woman who had an amazing sighting. And she said, I didn't ask for this to happen. And I don't appreciate when people make fun of me. And I'm like, I'm on your side. I'm on your side. So, yeah, it's just been a wild ride. And every time I think I'm going to back away from the UFO topic and concentrate on something else, it keeps pulling me back. So
well, I'm sure once you get the foot in and people know, because you're almost like a therapist to a degree, right? It's like, I have this story that touched me, but I'm afraid to tell anyone. I can tell you because I know you'll understand. And I think that's it exactly. You do have to play the role of therapist. And I've had some people, grown men, break down in tears telling me their story because it was frightening or just so intense, and nobody would listen to them. And you're like, okay, you just, I didn't. Again, I worked in a lab. This was not something I learned in school, how to interview UFO witnesses. So I've been learning over the years as well. And you just, you give them an ear and you try to share with them what you've learned, from other cases. And so it's really been amazing. But it's funny when I run across or somebody on Facebook who I used to work in the lab with, they're like, "You're doing what?" Because they knew me as, R&D chemist. And here I am on some podcast or TV show talking about UFOs. And yeah, that's so funny. It's funny that, mentioning the witnesses, because I wonder how much more with any kind of, I don't know if that's always the greatest term or not, but paranormal, to kind of lump a bunch of things together, is that I wonder how many more witnesses there really are. Because, if there's really a Sasquatch, why aren't more people seeing it? Well, lots of people are, but I wonder if there's how much more that just, how much sightings you get, like 1 of the 10, like how many people just are like, don't want to tell anyone, or they just don't want any publicity, right? Maybe they tell their family and friends, but they don't want to bother coming on a podcast.
Yeah. And then the ones who do talk to people, how many of them report it? It's less than 1 in 10. There were incidents in the Hudson Valley during the 1980s. There was a huge wave for about 6 years. And these massive triangular craft would hover treetop level over major highways, and all the traffic would stop and people would get out of their, roads you should not pull over on.
Right, sure.
All the traffic just stopped and everybody got out of their cars. And there are many, many nights where there were easily 5,000 witnesses.
Wow.
And yet you have 2 or 3 reports from that. Not, not to say they didn't tell friends, but they never came out with it. So Yeah, it's probably a staggering number.
Yeah, sure. That reminds us, that's probably what happens in California, because our freeways are always stopped where they shouldn't be stopped. So maybe I just need to look up. Maybe there's
Look
UFOs
up!
everywhere.
Come on, you're missing it.
What was that? The UFO flap, was that like Close Encounters? Did they take some of that? I think there was. I don't remember if it was Hudson Valley, but I remember there was a UFO flap that when they made Close Encounters of the was a third kind, fourth kind, whatever the movie's title is.
Yeah, what year was that film? I know Hynek was in it, and he certainly, J. Allen Hynek, who was, the Project Blue Book and then went out on his own. But he certainly knew about the Hudson Valley wave, and I'm sure. And I hear Spielberg is coming out with a new UFO film he's
really?
working on. Yeah, it probably be 2 years from now, but it's all very hush hush, but he's working on something. So I don't know. I'm only speculating, with all these Navy pilots and Tic Tacs they're seeing and all this government. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting film. There's a lot of truth in his. He took for Close Encounters. He took a lot of actual, cases and sightings and put that into his film. So I'm sure he'll do a good job. And, I'll give you my number, Spielberg, if you want to consult me. I'll be happy to do a cameo.
You give me a comic book character on, a Spielberg movie. Like, these are bucket list items you're taking.
Oh, yeah. I was telling you before the show, I just need that action figure now. So.
We coming. Did you feel vindicated at all with because now I remember growing up, like UFOs, it was like, oh, you're silly or whatever. And I've always been very curious, right? So like I naturally like, oh, what are UFOs? Like, ghosts, whatever. I'm just curious about whatever is happening.
Sure.
Physics, everything, right? It was like, oh, what are these people thinking? So but it was not mainstream, right? Most people like, you're a kook. There's no aliens. And then after it's like the Nimitz, I think that was the one off San Diego coast here, and the different Navy pilots and things coming out. Did that kind of give you some vindication for all of it, or did it not matter to you?
It absolutely changed the field. Knock on wood, I never personally got ridiculed to my face, at least. I think maybe I intimidate people. I don't know. That might be that I think they might be afraid of me. But certainly the entire field changed, especially when the New York Times came out with the article in 2017. And people who would, just kind of brush it off, they'd say, you were right. You were ahead of the curve. And, and you're like, yeah, where have you been? If you just, the problem is critics and real skeptics, they don't study the history and the cases. There was, I don't remember who it was just running down all these witnesses. And somebody asked, well, how many witnesses have you personally, interviewed? And the guy's like, well, none, but I've read things and I've seen when you sit down across from somebody who had a UFO hovering over their head for 20 minutes at treetop level and you look into their eyes, the truth of it. You don't know what it is they saw, but they saw something that wasn't a plane, it wasn't a helicopter. They saw something enormous and just inexplainable. And you have to talk to the people who have witnessed it.
Well, that's what I always have thought with it, too, is that when you actually you discount so many people and you just out of hand say this isn't real. I think one of the Hudson Valley ones they tried to say was like ultralights. And my dad used to fly ultralights. My dad was a pilot, and before he bought like a little Cessna, I think it is. He was flying these ultralights, and I've been in it. It's like a go-kart and with wings, right?
That's exactly what I say. That's it. Yep. Go-kart with a giant weed whacker engine.
Right. And they sound like that too, right? Like, they're like, no one thinks that's a giant silent UFO hovering. Especially along tree line, you would just see ultralight there. Like,
yes. And unfortunately, Stormville Airport, which is in the Hudson Valley, had a group of Cessna pilots and ultralight pilots. They called themselves the Martians. And once the UFOs were happening, they would actually get tipped off. I've spoken to some of the people involved. They would get calls that a UFO was just seen over Route 84 in Yorktown Heights. They would jump in their planes and then they'd turn on their lights and fly in a V formation. So it was great. It was great disinformation. It was great cover. No, that was us. And they did this for quite a while until a pregnant woman was driving along the road and they were doing their low flyby and she thought it was a UFO and like went off the road and almost, she could have gotten killed. And then when they realized, oh, wait, there's liability here. They were getting threatening phone calls because people knew who they were. But, ultralight lights are not supposed to fly in the dark. Sure, and these idiots were risking their lives and the lives of the people on the ground. And most of them were also professional pilots. So they're risking their livelihoods as well for a stupid joke. So yes, that still rears its ugly head on a regular basis. But no, you are correct. There's no, I always say it's like mistaking a flock of lawnmowers, for a giant silent craft.
Right. Yeah. Ultralights or anything, they are not silent.
No. Yeah, I went up in one as part of the research for this, because if you're going to discredit something, you need to experience it. And it was a little intimidating but as soon as we took off, oh my God, you feel like Superman.
You feel like you're floating. You really just feel like a bird up there. It's really cool.
Right. I absolutely loved it. But no, I was not mistaken for a UFO.
That's well, yeah. The ultralight is a cool experience. Like my dad, I mentioned he flew them. He also crashed them. So his last crash, he's lived from hard. I wouldn't be laughing about it, but he hurt himself pretty good. I think he broke his ankle. Luckily, his back was okay, but he did hurt it. I don't think anything was broken. He got airlifted to the hospital, and things. So that was his end of ultralights. And then he got a real plane and things. So we were in the actual airplane. But the ultralights, it is neat. I get why people like doing it. I'd be terrified at dark trying to run around.
Oh, it's crazy to do that in the dark. But yeah, so unfortunately, there was a very effective disinformation campaign at the height of the sightings. So.
Right. Yeah, that's happened with, I think, crop circles and things too, where they'll have these crop circles and then someone will come out, oh, I made it this way. And then they show you and it looks nothing like it. And you're just like,
right.
No, that guy makes this other thing over here, He stomped on some weeds and it looks
That's
like
right. Yeah, he took a board and some rope and stomped down the weeds. And whatever is happening, there are people who try to fake it. And now with AI and all the things people can do, faking videos, it's from this point forward, it's going to be almost impossible to authenticate any photograph or video.
Yeah, it is. It's unfortunate. It's interesting with AI and things. I wonder if things like going to the actual theater and things like actual seeing humans again, it's like we've gotten very into these screens, and then I wonder though if it's going to be like you start to distrust them so much because of all the AI and these things. I was like, well, I don't trust anything I see on here. Why don't they just go over here and see a human and know they're actually there, you know?
Yeah,
So,
but I do have to say I am a lover of old movies, particularly from the 30s, and I would love to see more Cary Grant, Clark Gable movies, making
right?
making new movies with these characters.
Sure.
So there's going to be great benefits, but there's going to be a lot of nonsense to sift through.
There is. Yeah, it's going to be hard to find the signal through the noise
Mhm.
kind of effect. So I wonder then, with your background in the sciences, how do you approach when you UFOs or ghosts, any subject like that? Do you approach it as kind of as a scientist, as more of like a journalist, just collecting stories, both? Like how do you go about that?
Yeah, you can take the girl out of the lab, but you can't take the lab out of the girl. I was a science nerd as a little kid. My brother and I would always do experiments, and every summer we'd have a different science project for the summer.
That's
And
fun.
so, yeah, I think it's going moderately skeptical, but open-minded. There's a balance there. But is there any science you can do to prove or disprove? And always look for the rational. So I think people know I will give you a fair shake. Obviously, what I do, I know this exists. And, you better know I'm coming to test your credibility. And I want to stand in the location if I can at the same time of night or day. And is there a flashing cell tower over there? Are you in the path of airplanes? Is there anything, it's tough because some of these, usually when something happens in the UFOs, you can stand on the same spot for the next 50 years and never see it again. So you're just trying to judge what in the area might have caused it, and then talk to the person and other witnesses. And when they seem credible and you can't ascribe it to anything mundane, I'll put it in the plausible category.
Sure.
But like there was one back to Pine Bush about 10 years ago, or 8 years ago. A whole family saw this circular craft. It didn't land in a field. It hovered about 3 feet above. And there were these circles of, it wasn't a crop circle, but all the tall grass was bent and broken at a certain height of about 3 feet. And you take a Geiger counter into the circle and it's 7 times normal radiation.
Wow.
You go 10 feet away, it's fine. You go back, and there were 3 different circles of crushed grass. How do you explain that otherwise?
What
something.
Is a Geiger counter? What does it measure again?
Radiation.
Radiation. Okay.
So
the guy with the stick, that stick had a lot of radiation as he went through.
That was it.
With a radioactive stick.
Yes, radio. Yeah, a little stick of uranium he was using. So yeah, you can absolutely bring science, hard science to, ufology is not a science yet, but that doesn't mean you can't apply scientific techniques to everything you do in this and the paranormal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I would, it's interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen the show, The Truth Is Out There, I think is the name. It's a guy's that hosted. He's a journalist, I guess, for a long time. And what they do is they'll take videos of things that people have seen. So,
yes. Is that History Channel or?
I think it's History Channel. I've been watching it on Hulu. They just brought the season up on Hulu.
Yes.
That I've been watching. And they do that too, which is really fun about that show is that, sometimes it'll be like literally in the flight line and they'll be able to find what plane it probably was so they can match it to the day. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. But then there's other ones where they're like, no, we think this is a real UFO. Like this is a plausible UFO, however they phrase it. That no, this doesn't make sense. So it's fun when you do that, and then you still have the open mind, because then you don't just go, oh, well, that's I think someone was trying to say some of the stuff the Navy guys were seeing, it was a balloon. I'm like, what's you're telling me these guys saw a balloon and tracked it? Like,
yeah.
Come on, like who's the bullshitter here?
Exactly. And these are Top Gun pilots, not to mention, I think in that one with the Tic Tac, the USS Princeton was, had tracked these on radar. They have the most sophisticated tracking and monitoring. And if the guy you have in that seat doesn't know a balloon we are in deep, deep shit.
Not really. Oh dear. I wonder, like, I know, like the current kind of materialistic or materialism kind of view is we just want to prescribe like all UFOs are just they're technology of some sort, right? And it goes in the technology bubble. Not too long ago, we would have said they were like, gods or angels or something floating up there, right? It's just kind of whatever the world view us at the time. Do you have any theories on what you think they might be? Or
I clearly think a lot of them are nuts and bolts because, they break branches on trees and crush grass and light reflects off them. And, but there are some the really high strangeness cases where, everybody talks interdimensional now. And I guess physics is proving there's umpteen dimensions. And, I think everything's on the table. And until we have that explanation, sure, I'm open, but I don't see, for me, I don't see the problem with the technology explanation, because even if they're from another dimension or who knows where, they're probably using technology to get here somehow. So all speculation, but I'm still in the nuts and bolts camp.
Yeah, sure. Well, I always wonder, like, why is it more fantastical to think like there was a breakaway civilization on Earth when they almost like there was a Black Panther movie, right? And then like Wakanda there, and it's like, and they're a little like more technologically advanced. Why is that less plausible than aliens coming from? And I don't know. I just think about these things, right? I'm like, why is that less plausible than aliens coming? Was there an Atlantis civilization that just got so far ahead that they were like, we don't really want to bother with you people, and that's why you see them over nuclear plants. They're like, well, we're not going to let you blow the planet up.
That's right. That's right. They have a vested interest. They live here too. Yeah, that's certainly possible. We've been around long enough that there could have been a real advanced civilization. And imagine somebody who even had 100 or 1,000 years more than what we've done now.
Sure.
That could account for it. A lot of people say, that what we're seeing is us in the future, or it is a breakaway. So, it can make your head hurt when you think about all the possibilities. So, I don't usually get into the speculation of it all. My real interest in what I focus on is interviewing witnesses and trying to piece together, similarities and, just get the history and the information of these cases out into the public.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You said you were interested in history, right? The Civil War, things like that. And then this is modern history, happening right now. So
yes,
that makes a ton of sense. And then the other witnesses, before we move off the UFO topic here, is the animal witnesses, right? I know that you had the book. I noted it was Animal Reactions to UFOs. What did you learn in that research process?
A lot, because when interviewing witnesses, time and time again, they said my dogs were going crazy. They were barking like maniacs, or the cats were howling, and So I looked outside and saw this. And one day I'm giving a lecture and I told a story like that. And I paused. I said, if it wasn't for our pets, we'd miss half of these UFOs. And so, the proverbial little light bulb went off over my head. And I'm like, wait a minute. I was like, I need to get a book on animal reactions to UFOs. There were none. There are, I don't know how many scores of UFO books. People had written articles and papers. And I was like, oh no, this is too important. So I really delved in, and really everything from insects to elephants, every continent around the world, you name the species, the era, there are these severe animal reactions, usually fear. They want to get away from whatever this is. And so I was getting into the science, naturally, of it as well. Like, I think one of the big things is animals have something called magnetoreception. They're very sensitive to magnetic fields. And a rather interesting example of this, I don't know if you have a dog or ever had a dog, they want to face north when they do their business.
Really?
And yes.
Never knew that. Okay.
Absolutely. If they're not on a leash and, you have them if you just let dogs out in the yard or in the field, you'll see them spinning, and there have been times when I yelled at my husband, "Stop the car!" and I jump out with my compass, and because I see a dog in a yard, and yep, they're going. And I think it's cows who want to face a certain thing, and you can do Google Maps and see huge herds of cows, and they're all facing. They use it for hunting. Wow. They use it for survival. Birds use it to navigate. Sure. Because there's something called magnetite, just magnetized iron. It's in the brain, and in birds, it's in their beaks. So it's like a million little compasses for them, like homing pigeons.
For the migrating,
Right. And actually, carrier pigeons and other birds, they physically see the magnetic fields. I talked to a group at it's Urbana-Champaign University in Illinois. They're studying this. There's something called cryptochromes in the eyes, which allow these birds, they'll see it like, they think like a curved gray line. So if they see a curved gray line going off to the right, they know that's east. If it's curved that direction. So they are physically seeing road maps in the sky. Right. So then all animals have this. Humans have it too. They're finally admitting humans have magnetoreception. So if you introduce a UFO, which we know can turn off your car, it interferes with radio and television, lights go out, very strong electromagnetic fields. To these animals, it must be like being on a roller coaster blindfolded. It just totally upsets their natural order of things. And I think that's causes a lot of could be a lot of other things, high-pitched sounds, all kinds of things. But I think that's probably a lot more science than you wanted to hear.
No, it's really interesting. Thank you for that. No, it's funny. I'm going to have to watch because how the bar's set up is right over here. There's the wall is basically a sliding glass door. So it's kind of indoor, outdoor. But the real privilege is I get to watch my dogs go to the bathroom whenever they do. Because you look out, and you're like, oh, it's so nice. You see the pool, and then you see a dog circling over there. But now I'm like, wait. And it's really easy because that's north is just right over here. This is where the San Gabriel Mountains are. If you ever see the Rose Parade and stuff. The mountains, I'm along those same mountains. That's
nice.
That's the north. So it's really easy to know. So now I'm like, oh, so that's probably why they face in. They're not staring at me. They just want to face north there. So.
As much as they like you, that's not the reason. But yeah, so as strange as that is, what does that tell you? That is a comfort level for them. That is how they feel at ease to do their business. It's and they're doing studies now that the slightest deviation, because magnetic fields deviate slightly throughout the day, they adjust to it, even minute changes. So it's really like when an earthquake's coming and animals take off before the earthquake or sound alarms. They know they have senses that we need to pay attention to.
Right. Yeah, I believe it. I was where my wife and I worked was a medical device company for insulin pumps. So for people with diabetes. And there was a lot of diabetics would have service dogs. And the company now has a little sensor you put on your body. It measures your glucose and things and sends it over to your phone and the insulin pump and things. But the service dogs would pick up on them having a low blood sugar before that would. So that's what the dog would be for, would be to kind of alert them and then alert anyone around them, but preferably alert them that, you eat a lightsaber or whatever, right? Just get some sugar. And so you would see it, and they'd be at work, and the diabetics there would have them, and I've seen them other places too, but they and the dogs at work, and that was just a job. And I don't, if it was that, if they can smell, they can smell a lot more than us. So if they smell the difference in your chemistry or what, but
that's it. They are amazing. They can even smell cancers in people. So we really need to. It's not just a novelty. Oh, look what Fido is doing. It's very important information. They have access to. For everything from medical to UFOs, it's something we really need to pay attention to them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything else that surprised you or anything when you did that research, or was that the big one?
The science behind it was, the birds have these Herbst corpuscles that detect vibration. Like, when you see a wading bird standing in the water and all of a sudden they dart down. It's because when a fish goes by, it's a tiny little vibration. They feel it in their legs. And, it's amazing. You have to read the book. I'll send you a copy.
I have to read that.
But it's just so the science behind it, but also the variety. There's a great case from Phoenix, Arizona, the Phoenix Zoo. I think it was back probably about 15, 20 years. And this UFO came over the zoo at night when it was closed. The guard's truck he was driving around stalled. Everything went out. And they said there was this light beaming down, this blue light. It said there were sounds of alarm from every animal. Now you've got, you have reptiles to lions and tigers and bears and animals from around the world. I mean, if that isn't the prime case, and a lot of them, they say, they were disturbed by the lights. Well, a lot of animals are in at night. They're not, they're in enclosures or they're inside. So it was animals inside or out, regardless of what they were seeing, they were feeling something. They were sensing something. They had to actually get the vet because they were so worried they had been harmed. The animals were okay. But sometimes these animals, it takes days or weeks to recover, or they never do. They get this PTSD over it. It's so traumatic.
Right. Yeah, I believe it. I had on Matt Pruitt. He wrote a book about Sasquatch, the phenomenal Sasquatch. It's all about the different sightings and things. And so we talked about that. And one of the things, there's I've never covered it there. Or there's also a podcast he knows, the guy called Sasquatch Chronicles. And the host just brings people on. They just tell their stories. So he's just interviewing witness after witness. And, he'll ask questions to things, but mostly he just lets them, talk and, tell their story. And you hear that all the time. There's it'd be hunters and they're hunting dogs. And the hunting dog will hide under the car and refuse to come out. And it's just it's the weirdest behavior. And he's like, these dogs will go after bears and things. And then hid under the car. And it's like, what is that is true fear for an animal. Absolutely. This is their job, and they love that duty of it. That is now just too afraid to even
Oh,
pretend,
those are
so.
great examples. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
just, I've heard, German shepherds, they'll run through a brick wall for you. And when,
Right.
there was one case where these two women see something over a school, and it was a big German shepherd named Hans, and Hans starts whimpering and trying to dig a hole to hide in. And they were initially, oh, this is cool, we should go closer. And then Hans is scared out of his freaking mind. They ran. So yeah, your pets, and hunters know the animals in the woods and their hunting dogs. That's interesting. I'll start looking into the hunting dog angle of it.
Yeah. And so I wonder then, so, I know you mentioned that you're, into history and things, right? And so is that because what I've always told people is what I love about ghost stories, and if we go somewhere, I like to go do the ghost walks and things. So like the good ones, they give you the history of the place too. And it's kind of not trying to be punny, but a living history of that place, right? Like ghost is kind of a remnant in some capacity, at least for telling the story, right? Is that what got you into, ghost stories with the different books, or?
I was always fascinated. I don't know if you ever heard of Hans Holzer. He was very popular decades ago, and I was the unruly child reading under the covers with a flashlight. Ghost stories to scare the heck out of me, and it wasn't anything I ever thought I would do. And then my boyfriend at the time, now husband, decades ago, I wanted to go to Gettysburg, for the history. And he said, we should stay at a haunted bed and breakfast. And I remember turning to him and say, are you crazy? There is no way I am going to spend the night in a haunted place. And I got hooked. It was fascinating because every case is different. And, I've been in many historic homes, prisons, battlefields, restaurants, you name it. And it's like the ultimate question, what happens when we die? Sure. And you're getting a little preview when you do this. And, you do find things that you can tie in. Just very simple case. There were family moved into a house. It was an older house, and they kept smelling like pipe tobacco, which is very distinctive. And, the place had been completely stripped and repainted in this, and they were seeing a man in a dark robe, and the kids are getting scared. What is going on? And, so one day this old lady knocks on the house door and she says, oh, I'm sorry to bother you, but, I lived here as a little kid. And so they said, do you know anything about, it's scaring my kid. Oh, that was Dad. He was a judge and he wore the black robe, and I think he died of lung cancer because he smoked his pipe too much.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's no way these people could have known this. And so this guy is there and he's giving clues. Look, I'm wearing a judge's robe. Here's my pipe tobacco. A lot of these hauntings, they're giving you clues. And to you, it's terrifying because you don't know what's going on. And most of them are benign. There's something unresolved and they're trying to get their message across.
Sure. I believe that there was one time, and this was many, many months ago. My ex-girlfriend, so maybe 20 years ago, this is before I was dating and married my wife. We went to a haunted hotel in Ventura, California. And I got us the haunted room. I forgot, actually, so I didn't think about it and things. And we got there, she's like, oh, so did you get a haunted room or anything? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I'd like to kind of forgotten. And also I wouldn't have told her anyways. Because terrified.
And this is why she's your ex-girlfriend.
Yeah,
now.
exactly. I know. You see why she left me. This was the moment. But we got there and there was a little closet. And so we got in, we're just throwing her stuff down, and she goes to the closet and she like just steps back. And she goes, "Are you sure this isn't the haunted room?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure. Why?" She's like, "I don't know. I didn't see anything. I just opened the closet and got like this real feeling of like dread." And I was like, "Oh," and she said that. So I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, "No, I remember that's the story, is that a lady hung herself in the closet."
Oh,
She's saying that. I was like, "That's right." And that's the story. And so then the other part of that story was like she was like, "Pull your covers off at night." Right. And again, I didn't think anything of it. I tend to kick the covers off a little. I get hot.
Right.
Like they're loosely on me all the time. But I remember that night, they kept not being on me at all. And I kept like grabbing it and things. And I was like, oh, and then the next day she was like, "Okay, so tell me the truth." And I'm like, "No, I think it is." And it was like, there was a haunting. So,
wow.
So, and we didn't see anything or hear anything, but it was that, and this never happened all of the other times we've gone and done never this, feeling of dread. She wasn't someone that was like, I'm an empath or something, right? It's just that sudden weirdness of that moment. So
those are the best cases, when you're not expecting something, you don't know the story, and it's something happens to corroborate what others have felt.
Yeah. How do you feel about what the term, like the quote unquote kind of the ghost hunting equipment? People have like the little light things that come on, or get the voices that come on. What do you think about those?
It's gotten absurd. When I started, I had ages ago, before everybody had a group. It was me and a 35 millimeter camera and a cassette recorder, just interviewing people and taking pictures. And, some of the things, the EMF meters, electromagnetic fields, I think that's good. Cameras that can see in infrared, applying the science. And then some of these things they're just ridiculous. And they are. Right. And people spend, I can't even watch these shows because they spend like 4 hours setting up all the equipment and they're focused on it. I mean, nobody has in 30 years, nobody's ever called me and my REM pod went off. I think it's haunted. No, you sit there and you listen, because people hear footsteps, they hear voices, they see it. They're using their 5 or 6 senses, and that's the experience of a haunting. Once you establish that, sure, bring in some technology, see if you can locate it. I'm absolutely all for the science, but some of this stuff has no basis. And I was at Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. I had agreed to speak and be part of a group hunt event there, like a weekend. And somebody had one of these things that it just scrolls back and forth between all the radio stations. That's all it does. And you're supposed to ask questions and get messages. And somebody, asked a question, and I don't know, it said William. I said, it also said it's 73 degrees in Detroit.
Right.
I mean, it's just random nonsense, a lot of this. So, I am the last person to be anti-technology, but when you take advantage and come up with baseless gadgets that people spend, tons of money. There was one woman, she thought, I'm going to get in. She went and ran and spent $2,000 on all this equipment. And then she finally went on a ghost hunt and nothing really happened, but she was terrified, and then sold everything, at half price to a friend of mine because it's not for her. People are, what should I get? I was like, get a digital recorder, you have a camera. I said, the best way to conduct a ghost hunt, sit down and be quiet and and start from there.
Right. Yeah. I believe it. When we were, I was born in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Oh, there you go.
And I always say I'd never been. I was born and we moved before, and we'd never gone back. My dad went to WVU, which is there, but we didn't live there. And my dad was Air Force when I was a kid, so we moved around. So this past summer, I was like, when we go visit my grandparents and stuff that are all like Pittsburgh and suburbs, Pittsburgh kind of area. I was like, let's go to Morgantown. It's only an hour away. And I'm like, I hear it's beautiful. There's Cheat Lake by there. That's really gorgeous. And I'm like, so okay, let's go do this. And me, my brother, my wife, his wife, my niece, and her husband. And I'm like, I'm gonna see if I can find a ghost tour, because then you can go. They'll take us around the city. You get to see the city. They'll tell us, different stories. And so we did it, and they had some of those. I think one was like a ghost box, and we're there, and it's like, oh, look, it's being very active. And I'm like, I don't know what to think. Nice sunny day to me. Like, you said yes. I'm like, it could have said any number of things to me. Yes. Like, I can't hear whatever you're trying to tell me. But I always wondered if there's ever, like, to me, I'm just like, yeah, this seems like some goofiness you're throwing at me. Yes. And I love ghost shows. Like, there used to be Haunted History on the History Channel.
Those were good because you got the story of the haunting. What is not interesting to me is the number you get on your EMF meter. It's the story of the people who lived there and died there and are the cause of the haunting.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. Was there anything you learned about hearing, like the stories and things? Did that teach you anything about storytelling? Did you take anything away from like hearing all these ghost stories, UFOs, like, all the different things you researched, the people just telling their stories? Does that impact your actual like fiction writing and just writing in general?
I think it all kind of evolved together. Because I used to love to write stories as a kid, but when you're creating fiction, you're kind of making up people, places, and things. But when you're interviewing people, like I said, I like to be at the location and interviewing. It just fleshes it all out. It just gives you the whole experience, what the place looks like, feels like, smells like. And so you can do richer storytelling in these cases. And there's somebody at the fair, he goes, I just love the way you don't embellish. I was like, you don't have to. When you have a genuine UFO or a ghost case, there's no reason, you need 4-page of flowery philosophizing. Tell the story. And the other, I was happy to say, he said, you make us feel like you're there with it. So that's always my goal, whether I'm writing about UFOs or history, zombie novels, whatever it is. Sure. I want the reader to feel like, oh, holy crap, I feel like I'm in the middle of this. So that is my goal. Whether I'm successful in that, depends. But that's what I always try to do, tell a good story.
Right. Well, and before we transition, like I told you before the show, and I've said it on the show a million times, like with a name called Writers Drinking Whiskey, I'm ethically mandated to talk some writing talk. So before we transition completely there, I did want to mention, because I noticed also you had the Mysterious Stone sites that's also Hudson Valley based.
Right.
So I'm maybe wondering what you could tell me, like, just about those in general, what makes them mysterious. And
so across the Hudson Valley and throughout New England, and really all over North America, there are big standing stones, there are chambers, there are massive glacial erratics, that's, boulders that fell out of the glaciers that seem to be pushed into different lines. And many, many of them have astronomical alignments. There, if you stand behind this rock and look at the pointed rock down there, it's where sunrise on winter solstice is going to come. And it's fascinating. I've been an amateur astronomer since I was a little kid. So with this, I get to hike in the woods, study history, and use my astronomy. And then there's weirdness that goes on at these places too. But I mean, I can't tell you how many miles I've hiked, and they're always at the top of mountains, damn it. It's always,
Right.
you're always out of breath by the time you finally find the thing. But again, you bring science to it. If you can't be there on the actual date, there are apps that show you where the sunrises and sunsets are. And the mainstream historians in this area say Native Americans never built anything in stone. Well, that's just crap. It's like they weren't smart enough to put one rock on top of another rock. It's really,
Right.
it's really insulting. But when, if it was one site, fine. But when you find a dozen sites, when you find 100 sites, and they're not all astronomically aligned, but they're mostly aligned to something, just because we don't know what it is, doesn't mean they didn't move those rocks for a damn good reason. To them, it was an important thing. So there are groups that study this, but they keep everything secret. We don't want to tell anybody where these things are. So a lot of them get destroyed because let's not bring public awareness. So I kind of took this up as a quest because I don't have anything else to do. I don't have any other projects. But no, I this was important to me because this is a huge piece of our past we're ignoring and destroying. And there's so much we could be learning for this, but it's like pulling teeth with a lot of the historians, and they can just, like, I used to teach astronomy just in adult education, but still I did my own curriculum, and I had to know something about astronomy, and I've been an amateur astronomer, and we did observing and things. And so it was a historian at a local SUNY State University college, and somebody had said, "Oh, you should talk." So I sent a bunch of photos, and some great photos of like spring equinox sunset over this magnificent pointed stone, which was in a line of other stones. And so I'm like, maybe this will break the ice and somebody will get the clue. Yes, these are legitimate archaeological historical sites. Well, I have never been so insulted in my life. I get this condescending thing. Now, Linda, you need more than one rock to take. He just ignored everything I had written, all the data I had written. He just looks at the picture. You can't just stand behind a random rock and photograph the sunset. Like, you son of a, and he went on, and the glacial erratics that are pushed into line, he goes, now those are just big rocks that fell out of the ice of glaciers. I used to lecture on the impact of the ice age on glaciers in the Hudson Valley. So again, just I was so steamed. And so I wrote back, thank you so much for for looking at the data I sent. And just to let you know, I used to teach astronomy and do understand the concept that you need 2 points to draw a line. And, so I really just wanted to tear him a new one. But I just pointed out, my background, my science background, and, that he did not respond. I think he realized, but that's so much of the reaction, unless, you have a PhD in archaeology and you try to suggest anything to anybody in academia, get away, peasant, you're.
Well, even if you have a PhD, if you don't agree, I think there was, I forget the fellow's name, but he was a PhD geologist, and he went and did the Sphinx in Egypt and said, this looks like water erosion. That was a big, everyone, criticized him. They know exactly why he says it and things. And now I think over the years, more people have started to agree with him to where it's not such a wild idea. They've tried to fit it into their narrative, how it makes sense, maybe if it's water erosion and whatnot. But it's, I always think of it as intellectual humility, right? Like I try to be like, just if you're humble enough, then you can actually listen to what people are saying and like be open to it. And then maybe you can push back, maybe you can disagree, maybe you can, not think it makes sense. But if it's just, I have this narrative, and it's like if you talk with someone that's super religious, right? Well,
yes.
Okay. God's not real. This is what I think. Well, they're coming from a place they're never going to agree with you, right?
Right.
Right. It's more religion versus no. It's supposed to be the science supposed to be thought based. It's supposed to be concept based. Can we talk?
Supposed to be.
Look at it, and so often that's not just you hear like a lot of these talking heads, and I won't put any particular one on blast, but there's a few scientists you see on TV all the time, and they'll just talk about everything like they know, like they're the smartest human that knows all information, that they're basically AI incarnate. Like, oh no, that can't be because of this. And I'm like, okay. And like you said, they'll never talk to a witness. They'll never actually look at the data. It's just from afar, they just poo-poo it and move on through there.
Yep.
So I wondered that the Hudson Valley sounds like a magical place.
It really, it has it all. It is the Disneyland of the bizarre. It's just, and we have the history, we have the ancient Native American history, and of course, we have the Dutch here so early, 1600s, and all these succeeding, the British, and you name the ethnicity coming into this area. So culturally, history-wise, and then you put the paranormal and the stone sites and the UFOs. No wonder I don't have time to sit down and watch a movie. I mean,
do you have any ideas why it might be such a hotspot for everything? Or is there ever any connections between like the UFOs and other kind of paranormal phenomenon?
Yes, and I fought that for years, but it seems, and again, we go back to Pine Bush, one of the biggest concentrations of UFO sightings, and you can stand in the middle of the main street and say, that place is haunted, and that place is haunted, and that place. So the weirdness seems to congregate in certain areas, and why the Hudson Valley in particular, I have no idea. I think a lot of it is people have been here long enough to document a lot of it. Some of these other areas of the country, like 1890 is new to them. Is old to them, right? That's like,
I'm in California, right? Something 100 years old is like, that's super old. And, we go to Pennsylvania. My grandparents' house is 100 years old, and that's just one of 100-year-old houses on the street. So.
Right. So I think maybe that it's just that there have been people here to pay attention to it and build on the stories. But there is something very unique to this area. I don't know what it is. It's beautiful. I don't know if you've ever been here,
I haven't been,
particularly in the fall. It's just a beautiful, diverse, like you said, magical place.
Yeah, very good. And I love how you keep your sense of humor about it, too. Sometimes you'll see people on the different shows, and they'll just be very like, because they want to be taken seriously, and they haven't been, right? Through the years, and you kind of lose your sense of humor about it. I appreciate that you keep it, right? You have the
thank you.
You've been a delight talking to, anyways. But then also you see it in your work with Bad Science and such too. So I think that's a real doing. How do you live so? Just generally, so then there's like the mundane kind of day-to-day life, right? And then there's all of this kind of fantastical stuff you deal with. Is it hard ever, like doing it the day-to-day, or is it just kind of, this is just your life and you don't think anything of it? Or
it is inextricably intertwined, obviously. And, I'll go on like Saturday, I spent all day at this UFO fair conference, speaking and interviewing witnesses, and you have to come home and do your laundry. It's
Exactly.
there is the life aspect of it, but yeah, it's my life now, so I don't really I don't really differentiate now because it is so interwoven with, it's not only what I do, it's who I am.
Mhm.
So it's just part of everything.
Yeah, very good. Has it? So in the ghost, I know we touched on a little bit, like kind of the life after this one, right? How's just the culmination of all of it? How has it affected your views on death and what happens after?
I think I always believed in ghosts and some sort of afterlife. And I was always fascinated by, stories of reincarnation, kids who remember something they have no way of remembering. But I didn't realize how pervasive it is. It's rather common. And even if, a ghost to me is something stuck in a location, whereas there could be like, just the spirit of a deceased person. Your grandmother comes to say hi to you on your birthday or something like that. She's not stuck there. It's just, and how often it happens to so many people. And so there's a very, they say the veil between worlds. It's a very thin, and there's a lot of holes in it. And yeah, and that's just another, just one quick story. Several years ago, my mother-in-law passed away, and it was a very beautiful funeral. And they played one song. It was "Let the Circle Be Unbroken." I had never heard it before, and we're all standing there holding hands, and it's like a moving moment. But the song went on and on, and I'm like, all right, we're not going to break the circle already. So I didn't say that, but in my head, enough of that already. So, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 days later, I'm in a library in Nyack, New York, because it's an old library that's haunted, and they invited me to come in, and I'm with a friend of mine, Barbara, who's a psychic. And she didn't know anything about my mother-in-law, the funeral, whatever. We just got together, and we're in the children's room. It's like midnight and it's dark. And then she stops. She goes, "There's an old woman here." I'm like, okay, I don't know what an old woman's doing in the children thing. She's like, "She wants to talk to you." And I'm like, what? And she looks right in my eyes and she said, "Yeah, she keeps singing this song, 'Let the Circle Be Unbroken.'" I gasped and I backed up. I'm like, no. It's what, and then she goes, "Yeah." She said, "You know what that is." She knows what you do now. And she just wanted you to tell everybody she's okay. I'm going to get like choked up, and I'm covered in goosebumps now. It was one of the most intense moments that
believe it.
She knew I wrote about ghosts and probably was like, yeah, okay, that's my crazy daughter-in-law, something like that.
Sure, right.
But then she comes to see me on a ghost hunt, and so I'm like saying to my husband, I was like, "Should I tell your sister?" And like, "Yeah, go ahead." So I told this, he told them the story, and it helped them. Sure. It brought them some comfort. But there's absolutely no way she knew anything about this. And, the psychic, and it was just one of the craziest moments. And it's like, okay, they're around us, our loved ones, they're around us all the time. They see everything. They know what's going on, which is a little creepy, when you're living with her son. And,
right.
but yeah, so I think that was a huge lesson I learned, that it's not just the creepy old house on the other side of the railroad tracks. It's everywhere with everyone if you just pay attention to it.
All right. Well, that is a powerful story. It's funny too how much it's so easy. It's almost like the guys with the ultralights, right? It's so easy to go, oh, psychics, they're just using a mind trick and they do this. Because I'm sure there's a bunch that's exactly what they're doing,
Yeah.
But when you mentioned reincarnation stories, all these, when you actually just listen to some of them and they go through it, you just go, no. And then you realize there's so much of them. There's so much going on. Like, how can you not be curious, interested in what's going on here? You have to kind of put the blinders on. Just go, no, I had this, worldview, and when we die, it's darkness, and we go into the ground, and that's just the end. The end of everything.
Surprise! Surprise! No, what you do now matters later.
Yeah. Amen. So awesome. So then, let's transition to the writing talk here. So what I was curious about, I think I mentioned to you this before the show, is that with the great variety of things you write, right? Like there's like history, there's science, there's the paranormal stuff, and there's the fiction, right? The zombie story. How do you what does your writing process? Is it different from kind of one type of writing to the next? Is it all basically the same? Could you describe that for us?
Yeah. History and science, you can do the storytelling, but it is a real discipline because you need to have your facts absolutely corroborated, particularly, in either science or history. And, I have done a lot of writing in Civil War. And if God help you, if you get the number of buttons wrong on somebody's jacket, or get the regiment wrong, they'll ride you out of town on rails. So there is you're in a strict guidelines. Whatever it is you're writing about, make sure it's in the framework of the truth and the facts. And then, your take on it. When I do my fiction, I feel like I'm kind of let out of school for the summer, because that's my facts, that's my fiction, that's the world I create. And I really got into writing for fiction. I know I've done a lot of nonfiction, but I always say my fiction is where I live and breathe, because it's my imagination going out there and creating whatever it is I want to create, whatever helps my story be more compelling. So that's the difference for me.
Sure. That's lovely. I love the way you put it there, because fiction writers and poets, we like to talk. Well, I don't know that we like to talk about, but we do talk about like truth and beauty, and I think it's a real thing. And I think that's part of it, is like when you're writing fiction, there is a truth. I sometimes hate when people go, my truth. And it's like, I'm getting rid of objective facts with it. But there is a emotional, a personal truth to things. And you find that there's an emotional, personal beauty to them. Do those ever interweave? Like when you're writing something, about the Civil War versus, how do you find the truth and beauty in that story, versus when you're working on your fiction?
Certainly in any war situation, it's horror, but the bravery, the fortitude of the individuals, the compassion in the middle of just absolute carnage. You see the best come out in a lot of people, and that's something you can always cling to and amplify in a situation. So sometimes it's hard and there are no good characters, and you just have to tell the truth of that. But I'm certainly always looking for those bright spots in very dark moments.
Sure. Well, I think it's funny. I always say, I'm on the fence about people. Some people I think are humans are so bad. We cast a shadow. But you see that a lot, is everyone goes, an apocalypse, everyone would just be awful. It's like, you know what? A lot of people are going to be great too. There is going to be awful people. And there's going to be a lot of people that band together. The only reason we're still alive, human race, if we didn't band together, like we would have died out, I think, a long time ago, because we're not that exceptional of animals,
No.
But we band together, and things. And so you see that altruism and the real spirit of who someone is,
No. And people discover things in themselves they didn't know they were capable of doing.
Right. Yeah.
So you yourself can be surprised, and then people you think would be wonderful are horrible. So
Right.
I mean,
absolutely.
it's this Shakespearean drama of extremes and characters of all sorts, and so you can take that and drop it into any sort of situation, and then that's again part of the fun of fiction, the adventure of, okay, I'm going to create this character that people think are X, but it's really Y.
Sure. Getting back to, so you had Ghost Investigators that was made into a comic. I was wondering, were you involved with the process, like the writing process of turning it into a comic?
I was stunned at how many different components there are to doing a comic book. I was like the story consultant, telling them the story. Excuse me. And then there's someone who writes the script, who does the pencils, who does the inking, who does, I had no idea. I was amazed. And these are all very talented people,
Sure.
who bring together something like a comic book. So yeah, it was very fun. They would run things by me, just to make sure, I don't want to say accurate, but in line with what the story was. So that was a really fun process. I had a blast with that.
Yeah, awesome. And they have to make an action figure of you at some point. Then
They
you can go through
do.
that process.
I don't understand what's taken so long.
I would buy it too. I think I have Mothman up here.
I saw your Mothman.
Yeah,
That's great. Yeah, I've been to the Mothman Museum.
Oh, very good. I want to go. I haven't been yet, but I'm West Virginia kids. I have to have.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to have the.
All right, I'll let you know when I get my action figure. Do you remember the one that had the real kung fu action?
Oh, yeah, the kung fu action.
Yes, I want a kung fu. I don't know kung fu, but it would just, if I'm going to be an action figure, I want the cool things and all kinds of gadgets, to hold and stuff.
Right.
So
absolutely, you can have all of the ghost equipment for your action figure.
Yes. All right. We're putting that out there to the universe. Get in touch with me.
Very good. Do you and then I mentioned the humor earlier, but I wonder, as far as infusing humor into your writing, is that something that I know that science is comical tint,
right?
As part of the making of it. Is that something you use a lot in the fiction of things too, and the other stories, or is that just kind of a one by one scenario?
Yeah, it's something I can't help infusing in everything because again, it's just me, and I found out even with the ghost stuff, if you stand up and give a lecture about death and destruction and hauntings for an hour, it doesn't go well. You need to break it up with a little humor here and there, and have lighthearted moments, and then you zero in. It's that play of emotion. You can't in anything. You can't have a monotone emotion running through the whole thing. You need to break it up. And so, I mean, I even used to give lectures on Civil War humor. Because soldiers are men are men. You get a few thousand guys in camp. Things happen. So yeah, I like to look at the humor because for me, it's a huge stress release. It's just I'd much rather laugh than cry. So, it's just something I've always gravitated to. And yeah, I think it's probably part of everything I do, whether I I can't help it, whether I want to or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's, and I, as I said, I think it just breaks things up and, shifts your moods and everything. So
Right. I had on a nature writer, Michael Branch was on the show. He's a humorous kind of nature writer and things. And he had described it as that humor is a survival technique. It's like we've used this to survive tense moments since the earliest days. So,
yep.
The idea that you shouldn't joke about something is like, that's the wrong thing. Like, no matter what it is, like you should be willing to still have some lightheartedness to it, because otherwise you'll never bear it. You won't survive it.
Right. Right. So, I think you're more resilient if you can laugh about things. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, thank you for that. So I think then it's time for some shots. So because it's almost 2 p.m. West Coast time. So just rapid fire questions. So are you ready?
Oh, shoot.
All right, here we go. So are all dolls haunted, or is it just mine?
There's a lot of haunted dolls. Yes, many are.
Right. Okay, so not just mine. Get to know I'm not alone. That's what I'm worried about.
I do have a somewhat haunted doll store, but let's go through the shots.
Okay. Worst advice you've ever received?
I don't know if you call this advice. It was kind of criticism. I think it was my 4th grade teacher who said, if I did not improve my penmanship, I would never amount to anything. So, yes, because I didn't have, I didn't have the greatest, and I still don't have the greatest handwriting. But that is quite a thing to put on a 9-year-old,
right,
aspiring writer.
Right.
Of course, if word processors hadn't come out, I might have been outed to nothing. So,
That's sure. Thank God for technology. What's a guilty pleasure?
Chocolate.
Chocolate?
Chocolate. Right. Chocolate, and chocolate. Those are the top 3. Yeah, I can't go a day without chocolate.
Yes.
I don't know if that's pretty guilty pleasure, I think.
Amen. Well, that's fine. If the aliens came off their high horse, like pun intended with this one, because they're high above us,
right?
High horse presented themselves to us tomorrow, what's one piece of art you would give them to teach them about humanity?
Oh boy, that's a good one. What would I give them to teach about humanity? You might have stumped me here. Probably some beautiful mountain or ocean scene, just something magnificent that we've been able to recreate about our planet.
Sure.
I'll go with that.
Very good. Frogs. Disgusting abominations to be avoided at all costs, or proof that the aliens are malicious and should be avoided?
As we are plagued by peeper frogs invasions of them, I'd say they're evil demons from hell. So if I know that wasn't one of the choices, but
that's okay. That's okay. We've got hard choices, you can make a third path for yourself. That's right. I don't know what it is, but I've always had an irrational fear of frogs.
Oh, really?
I can't look at. I don't know why. I just they creep me out. Like there can be like a mountain lion. I would be fine seeing it. Then you put a frog there, I'm like, oh my God, that's when I'd push my wife in front of me. Like everything else, I'm like, I'm gonna get back. It's the frogs. I'm like, no, you guys handle this one.
Oh, well, you don't want to be here because there's a swamp in the back, and in the spring they just start peeping. You can't sleep. And then they come, we have a pool, and they want to come start breeding in the pool. And if you try to get them away, they will jump and cling to you. And you're like covered in frogs, and they're peeping, and there's very loud, and they're everywhere. It's
That is
It's like
literally my
a,
nightmare. I'm going to not sleep tonight. Like,
I'm sorry. Well, my job here is done then.
very good. Wow, I've never heard that before. Like, but
Yeah.
geez, that is not fun.
No.
Yeah. So, and finally, favorite podcast, and why is it Writers Drinking Whiskey?
I just discovered it. It's rapidly becoming my favorite. It will be after this episode. Can I say my own
Yes,
podcast?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I have two of them. I have Murder in the Hudson Valley because I also do true crime because
Okay.
I don't have enough else to do, and then I have a UFO headquarters. So
Very cool.
I
to
have a
check them
real
out.
kick doing those.
Right. Yeah. I'll have to tell my wife. So my wife, we went on because I didn't notice the Unsolved Mysteries podcast when it started. So it had done, I think, just 2 seasons. Unfortunately, I wish it would keep going. But we took a drive up to Central California. And for anyone that's not like where like California is, like you have the LA kind of, and then south is like people live there. And then you have San Francisco area, like all of the Bay Area, you got Silicon Valley area, people live there. Central is barren, right? There's people, but it's rural. There's not much. That's where all the farmland and stuff is. And
Okay.
so we took a drive up the coast, this little village called Cambria. That's where we got engaged and things for our anniversary this past year. Listened to Unsolved Mysteries on the way up. And we got there and we got the nice room with the ocean view and things. And we just like sitting there like, just want to listen to Unsolved Mysteries. And we just sat there listening to Unsolved Mysteries. We fell asleep, like took a nap, woke up, listened to some more, went out to dinner. And so when I told her you were coming on the show, she was so excited. So she'll I don't know that she watches most of these shows because she gets quite enough of me. But this will be one she watches, and I'll have to tell her because she loves murder, like true crime.
There you go. Yes. Yeah. Murder in the Hudson Valley. We started out with just Hudson Valley, and we started getting listeners all around the world. So it's a podcast are just amazing. So I started branching out and now it's basically anywhere in the world I'll cover.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, we'll definitely check them out. Thanks for that. I mean, because besides it being a self-serving, question on my end, I also like to shed light on other podcasts. So it works out both ways. So thank you for that. So then I think we can get to the reading. I know you had a piece you were ready to read for us today. You want to introduce it?
just about a page. Is that good?
That's fine.
Okay. So back to the bad science. One of my favorite stories was about William Harvey, the one who discovered, well, I'll tell you what he discovered. So the first half of the 1600s wasn't the safest time in history to propose original ideas. Men of science in Europe were being threatened, tortured, and burned at the stake for trying to disrupt the old school of thought with new theories based upon observations and experiments. In other words, they were in peril simply because they were being good scientists. So it was with some trepidation and 12 long years of deliberation that Englishman William Harvey finally published his theories on the heart and blood. In 1628, he presented a 72-page book with the big name Exertatio Anatomica de Motu Cordis et Sanguinis in Animalibus, the anatomical exercise on the motion of the heart and blood in living beings. And what was in Harvey's book that caused such a ruckus? Here's the monumental, earth-shattering revelation. The heart pumps the blood that circulates through the body. No, really, that's it. Harvey said that the heart is a pump and blood circulates through the veins and arteries. That was it in a nutshell. Doesn't sound like anything to get upset about, right? Wrong. For over 20 years after Harvey's book was published, he endured scathing criticism, with some learned men going so far as to declare that his theories violated the very laws of God and nature. No, really, people were quite upset by the idea of the heart pumping circulating blood. The reason they were so upset was that over 1,400 years earlier, The legendary Greek physician Galen had written that blood was created in the liver, went one way through the veins out to the edges of the body, where it just disappeared. According to his theory, blood was essentially disposable. Use it once and throw it away. And the heart was not a pump. It was the seat of a spiritual force. And arteries were not meant to carry blood. They were designed to transport air and this mystical spirit. Galen became so revered over the centuries that his work was taken as gospel, and anyone who challenged Galen was a fool and a heretic. If you conducted experiments that produced evidence that went against Galen, it could only mean one thing. Your experiment was faulty, and your conclusions were wrong, and you were a fool and a heretic.
Wow, that is amazing. I hadn't heard that story before. But geez, that, what it reminded me of when you said it, is that, and I'm sure Einstein's better, in the long run, because he keeps getting proven right on certain things. But if anyone wants to go against Einstein, it's like you're a fool and a heretic.
Yes.
And
there you go.
Knew as much as he could know at the time. You would think at some point,
right,
you would find other things, maybe some of his stuff gets disproven, but it's like, no, you can't go against Einstein. It's like he's this revered kind of godlike, character. So that's interesting. And then the spirit's just pumped around. I don't know why the spirit needs pumped around through your veins, but
yeah, and plus, if you look at that, somebody did the number of heartbeats and the capacity of the heart and realized you would need to generate 65 quarts of blood every day. Which, there you go. There's the end of Galen's. Well, yeah, but that's if the heart was a pump. And so they just, it was ridiculous for the longest time. And he was genuinely in fear of his life.
Sure. There was one. It's a long time to think about something. I mean, that's a lot of deliberation. That's a lot of fear.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough. There was an Italian scientist, Malpighi, who was looking at frogs. There you go, frogs under microscopes and discovered capillaries. And they couldn't explain, because until capillaries were discovered, they didn't know how the blood came back. They knew it was being pumped, but they didn't know, they couldn't see until the microscope revealed it. But he knew he was right. And finally, by the end of his life, 20 years later, people begrudgingly, all right, maybe the heart pumps. Right. So that's basically what the book. I thought that was a good representative. And the Agassiz, who was the one who came up with the Ice Age. Well, that was the stupidest thing in the world. Ice Age, the continental drift. Well, that's ridiculous. Continents don't move. It's, you name it. These scientists have put up with, and some of them have been tortured and lost their lives over it.
Right. It's so funny because we don't learn the lesson either, right? Now we think we know everything, and it's, there's going to be something we're going to get proven completely wrong about.
Of course.
But no, it has to be this way.
Yeah. I had. Let's see if I can quick find. I think I ended the book with Seneca, the Roman, he was 1 BC to 65 AD. He said, "Our descendants will marvel at our ignorance."
Very good.
So I included that that's the last thing I wrote in the book because, they were wrong, but now we know everything.
Right. Yep. Always. Right.
Yep.
Okay. Well, as you see it with kids too, which is always funny. I love seeing it with the kids because they go, when I'm a parent, I'll never do that with my kids. And then their parent, and you see him do it. Me and my wife have joked about this. I don't point it out because all it's going to do is cause a fight here. But I'm like, I see it. She's like, I see it too.
Yeah. Keep a little notebook so you can remind them. Yeah, on October 12th, 2024. Do you remember you saying this?
Right, exactly.
Parents need revenge once in a while.
We do. We really do. Awesome. So I wonder then what's next for you? As far as
a rather serious project. 30 years ago, I was going through a collection of documents found in an old trunk. And it was basically from 1700s through to the present almost. And there was a lot of Civil War letters and material. And there was one soldier who just caught my attention. His name was Albion Brooks, was with the 8th Connecticut. And he's just such a nice guy. And all these other letters, everybody, have you seen Albion? Do you know where Albion is? Do you have any news of Albion? I'm like, everybody loves this guy. And it's, you know, you're reading all these letters, and I'm like, I really like Albion. You know, a guy who died 100 years before I was born, excuse me. But he was just he was intelligent. He was compassionate. He was, you know, in all these fights. And then I pick up a letter dated June 4th, 1864 from Cold Harbor, Virginia. And it's like, I regret to inform you, your dear friend Albion Brooks was severely wounded. And it goes into, he was shot through the abdomen. And we knew it was mortal, but we tried to keep him comfortable. And in fact, today is the 106, I'm getting goosebumps, the 160th anniversary of his death. He died on June 3rd. And it said, you know, he closed his eyes, said, I'm going, and quietly breathed his last. I was crying my eyes out. I feel like crying now because I knew this. You know, I didn't know, but you get to know a person. And, you know, at this point, my husband calls and I'm in tears. He's like, what's the matter? I'm like, Albion Brooks is dead. There's this pause. Yeah. You know, he was in the Civil War. Did you really think he was still alive? I said, no, you don't get it. I just picked up that letter. And to me, it just happened. So I have spent 3 decades. I finally tracked down a photo of him so I could look him. I have him. I keep him. I keep him by my desk here.
He's a handsome fellow.
He was, and he was just 21 years old when he died. You know, his whole life ahead of him, and I kept finding more and more little clusters of letters. And I finally, just a few months ago, came upon a huge collection of his letters. I've read his diaries, and it's like, all right, now's the time. I'm going to write this man's story. But it's not going to be a strict biography because I was like, I don't know quite how to approach this. And, you know, a historian should really keep themselves out of the history. And my husband said, you're the whole reason his story's going to be told. You're the one who's been running around the country for 30 years gathering this information. And I said, yes, so it's going to be called A Civil War Soldier and Me. And it's, you know, because I can't tell you how many years and hours I've devoted to this man's story. And so it's interesting that we're on the anniversary of his death here, talking about it. But honestly, historians, they can't help but put themselves in it, even if it's masked. And, you know, they have their own opinions and the way they write the story. So I'm just going to be honest about it. And I'm just going to talk about the process. And anybody who does something like this, it's so much of their own time. You know, whatever it is you're doing, you really pour yourself into it. So it's going to be his life, but kind of a shout out to all. Like I talked a couple of weeks ago to a woman who runs a small museum, and she's getting on in years and she doesn't have enough help, but she and her husband started this museum decades ago, and she's trying, you know, it's her own time, her own money, and it's important to her to keep it going. And it's people like that. who are dedicated to whatever cause it is, whatever subject. It's not a job to them. It's not, I'm going here 9 to 5 and getting a paycheck. It's pouring yourself into it night and day, around the clock,
Right.
So that's, I'm going to, shout out to people who have helped me with this. And then my own story of, lots of times I could have sat down and, watched a movie or gone out to dinner, but no, I need to read about the regimental history of it, or I found another letter. So it's been a real personal quest. So this is going to be a very personal project for me.
Yeah, that's lovely. I love the two things that remind me of. One is that there was the I think it started as a blog, but like Julia and Me or something, like Julia Childs was someone that went. They made a movie about it later.
Yeah, Julie and Julia or something like
something like that. And that was really interesting, kind of seeing the relationship that gets built, between that case Julia Childs and then her, but then in this case you and the soldier, and then the other layer of it being just the people in general that do these things, right? Like you mentioned, the lady with the museum and things, and the care people take with like their history and with the past is lovely. Anyway, I always think like when they funeral rites, all of this is really lovely. The way people care for their loved ones and then continue to care for the past at this point. That's maybe there might be some grave you're related to, but mostly like you're not at some point, right?
Right. It's just some, young man who had an extraordinary way of writing. Had he not written the letters the way he did or the diary, he was just a captivating individual and, certainly caught my attention. And, again, he was just 3 weeks past his 21st birthday when he died. And it's a way of honoring people who went before us. So I am privileged to be able to do this project.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to it. So thank you so much for coming on. If people want to find out more about you, what's the best place for them to go?
I have all sorts of Facebook pages. I have Hudson Valley UFOs, if you're just interested in that. I have 2 Linda Zimmermann author, and non-author pages. I do have a website. I don't keep it up anymore, but it's still there, go2zim.com. And then my podcasts, the UFO Headquarters or Murder in the Hudson Valley.
Well, very good. And I'll link them up with the description of the show here too.
Great. Thank you.
Plug those in there so they can find them. So thanks again. This has been a real thrill for me. It's been great timing. Besides me being excited, because if you're on Unsolved Mysteries, you're a celebrity to me. So this was like, I was super excited about this. It was great meeting you, and it was super, super great talking to you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been one of the most fun podcasts I've ever done. So my pleasure.
Extra shots. Question for the audience. As always, if you watched after a certain point, because I didn't do it before at that point, have you ever witnessed a UFO/UAP/ whatever we're calling them these days? Let us know down there in the comments section. I will let you know mine. I've actually experienced 2, not that wild cases, but I'll write them. And as always, if you are interested in supporting the show, please consider picking up a book. We went over a bunch of Linda's today. I'm really excited. I got to get my copy of the Bad Science, but also the animal book, because now I need to know. I think my dogs aren't just going nuts out there. They're alerting me to some kind of phenomenon I need to pay attention to. Consider that. Consider my books if you'd be so kind. That's really truly the best way to support the show. Is we don't have any advertisement or anything else on here. You just get unabridged writers drinking whiskey or coffee or tea. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Stay saucy, stay tipsy, and cheers.